one of the things that we've been working on here in the Diocese of San Diego is this notion of synodality. And the important thing for us as a diocese is to help everyone feel welcome and that they're part of our parish communities. And for those of you that do not know me, I'm originally from the Imperial Valley, born and raised here in Calexico. And then so they kicked me out so I could go to the seminary. And so, but it's always great to come back to the valley, especially not in the summer months. Back in early September, every year in September, I should say, in Rome, there's this conference for all the new bishops, for the bishops that have been named for the last year. And we have a nickname for it. It's called Baby Bishop School. And this past year, Bishop Pulido and Bishop Pham, being newly ordained bishops, had the opportunity to go to Rome and meet all the other bishops from all over the world that had been ordained in the last year and had become bishops, so that they knew how to do the bishop stuff. But before they went to Baby Bishop School, I had the opportunity to go with Bishop Pham and Bishop Pulido, and we traveled around Italy, all the different parts of Italy. And it was great. And if you've ever been to Italy, you'll know that there's a challenge because sometimes Italians are not very nice people. They're kind of rude to you and they're just kind of not very nice and they don't make you feel welcome. And it was a challenge. And I remember we were up in Venice and we were wanted to go into St. Mark's Basilica there where the body and the remains of St. Mark's were. And the only problem was there was a long line. It went all the way around. It was probably at least a 2-hour line. And we didn't have enough time because we had to go back to Rome. And so I was thinking, how can we do this? So I went to the bishops and I said to Bishop Pham and Bishop Pulido, I said to them, do you have your rings? Bishops have these nice rings, right? And now I have to tell you, in Italy, priests are like whatever. We're like regular people because there's thousands of priests all over the place. So if I would have gone and said I was a priest up to the front of the line, they would have said, well, get in line, Father. But I went up and I said to the people letting the people in, to the security, and I said, hi, I'm a priest. And they look at me and they're like, okay, and I said, and we want to get in, and looks at me and says, line's back there. I said, wait, I'm not done. I said to him, but I have 2 American bishops with me. And then, like, bishops? I'm like, yeah, 2 bishops. And then Bishop Pulido says, this is my favorite Italian word. Assolutamente. And they just let us in and we went straight in. And it was great. And for the rest of our trip, I started to use that rule. We were in Rome and there's a church right behind the monument to Victoria Emanuele. If you've never been there, you have to go to this beautiful church. It's got a lot of steps. But right there is where San Diego de Alcalá, our patron saint here for our diocese, is buried. And so I went in there and I was there and I was showing them, but it's locked. The side chapel where his tomb is, it's locked. It's closed. And so I went and I said, well, I'll be back. And so I went to the sacristy and I said to the guy, I said, I'm a priest from San Diego. And he's like, well, congratulations. And I said, but I have 2 of our new auxiliary bishops from San Diego. And the key word there was bishop. He came, he opened the doors for us, like leading us into heaven. He went in there, he gave us like a 45-minute long explanation of everything. And then Bishop Pulido had a question about why was San Diego depicted in a particular way. And, the sacristan says to Bishop Pulido, he says, I don't know the answer. But Bishop, I'm going to go get it for you right now. And he called somebody because the bishop had asked him this question. And he wanted to be able to tell the bishop the answer. And so In the Italian context, in the Italian world, it depends who you are or what you are, the kind of service that you're going to get. The challenge for us here this morning is, how can we turn that for all of God's priestly people? Because see, through our baptism, God has chosen all of us and wants us all to feel welcome by His church. And this morning I wanted to reflect on this beautiful notion of the difference between what we do here in church and what is done outside the church. That for us, what we do, even though we get paid, is really not a job. And the invitation that I want to give to you this morning is that we begin to look at what we do, not as a job, but as a ministry. Because see, we have to see why we do what we do. We don't do what we do because of the money. I'm sure that all of us here, without exception, can probably go out into the world and do what we're doing right now and get a lot more money. But see, we don't do it because it's a job. We do it because it's a calling. God calls us all to go and minister to those that are entrusted to our care. We do it not because of the amount of money we're going to get, but we do it because God chooses us and God calls us to go and transform the world. And one of my favorite scriptures is found in John's Gospel, the 15th chapter, 16th verse. Because in it, St. John tells us the words of Jesus. That Jesus says to those who are around him, "It is I who chose you. It is I who appointed you to go bear fruit that will remain." Meaning, my dear friends, that it is God Himself who has chosen us. That it is God Himself who has called us. It's all God's doing. And what we do in our ministries, not our jobs, is respond to that call. And God has called us and chosen us to go and do what we do out of love for God. And see, I think therein lies the challenge. Because oftentimes, it's hard to live out our calling. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes we don't want to answer God's call. Don't tell the cardinal this, Bishop, but every once in a while, my phone rings, and up on top it says Cardinal McRoy. And every so often, I always think, what is he going to ask me to do now? And so every so often, I'm tempted to hit that little red button and decline the call. I never do, Bishop, just so that you know. But I'm tempted to hit that little decline button on my phone. Because we don't know what God wants from us when God calls us. God has called us and chosen us. And there's so many reasons why we don't want to do it. A couple of years ago, before the pandemic, I had one of my associates. I'm pastor at Corpus Christi in Bonita. And I had my associate, who's now out in Brawley, Father Claro. And Father Claro and I had a great relationship. So we had a Holy Thursday one day. And we had done, washed the feet of 12 different people. I did 6, he did 6, and we were done. And so then right in the middle of Mass, I got this idea. So I was on one side of the altar, he was on the other side. And so I looked at him, and he looks at me. And I get this idea. I'm like, oh, I should wash Father Claudo's feet. So I went like this. And he looks at me and he goes, and he turns around, and I said, you, come here. And this is all going on in the middle of the Mass. And he goes, I said, yes, you, come here. And then he goes, if you've ever had Father Claro, I've seen him say Mass, he starts twitching and he goes like, no, like starts saying no. And he didn't want to do it. And the interesting, Holy Thursday, very somber, very solemn Mass. By this point, everybody's laughing inside the church because they're seeing Father Claro not wanting to get his feet washed. But so oftentimes, God calls us to go and to minister, to go and respond to this invitation that He has chosen us to do. Yet, how many times do we say, is it really me, God? Is it me that you want me to go and to do this? Is it me that you're calling to go and minister and do that? Because so oftentimes we fall into that temptation again, thinking that perhaps it's not worth it. Perhaps I'm not good enough for it. Perhaps I don't deserve it. And I think for us that do ministry, probably the biggest reason that we don't do it is because what we do is a thankless job. Just think about it. How many times during the week do you get a call, or do you get an email or a message from someone saying, oh, this weekend's Mass was great, was awesome. What your teacher did at the school was great. How many times a week do you get that call or that message? Compared to how many times a week do you get the call of someone complaining? That you see an email and before you click, you know somebody's going to complain. And so it's a thankless job. Because oftentimes we don't go out and do ministry and people don't appreciate it. People don't realize how many hours a day we spend doing God's work, trying to help them. And so the challenge becomes for us to recognize that our reward is not here. We do what we do because of how the Beatitudes end. Our reward will be great in heaven. That's why we do what we do. I remember a few weeks before my priestly ordination, Bishop Brom, who was then the Bishop of San Diego, called my classmates and I into his office. He wanted to just have a conversation with us. And he began the conversation by saying, just remember that your pay is not that great. You're going to work a lot of hours. And you're not going to get a lot of money, Bishop Brom said to us. But he then added, but you have to remember that the reward is out of the world. That your retirement plan is out of this world. Because see, that's why we do what we do. We do what we do, my dear friends, not because of what we're going to receive here. But we do what we do in ministry because our reward will be great in heaven. Because see, all we have to do is build up the kingdom of God. And that is what God asks of us. God wants us to be the face, the image of God to everyone that we encounter in our lives. And I think that Jesus gives us these beautiful recipes that we have to be able to follow as we do God's work in our lives. as we do our ministry every day that we walk into the church, every day that we walk into the school, every day that we walk into the office, God gives us these great recipes. The first one is, as Bishop Pulido mentioned, is Matthew 25. In Matthew 25, we have that beautiful recipe that Jesus has given us of how to do our ministry. And then you add to that the Beatitudes. When we combine those, I think that we should probably have that as our job description. The Beatitudes is a perfect way. Matthew 25 echoes that of how we should do our ministry. Are we meek and humble of heart? When someone was in need, what did we do for them? When someone was hungry. And you have to recognize that most of the time the people that walk into our offices are hungry. 99.9% of the time they're hungry. And they're not hungry for physical food, but they're hungry for God. They come searching for God. They come looking for God. And see, God has chosen us to be able to minister to them. To be able to give them something in response to their hunger. But what is it that we give them? Bishop Pulido mentioned his experience on the plane. One of the things that I hate to do is I hate going to the doctor. Because see, every time we go to the doctor, first is they make you wait. You have to wait there for hours and hours. And then for them, I always feel that we're not people. We're just a number. And I realize that my number at the doctor's office is my date of birth. If I don't give them my date of birth, they don't do anything for me. But I never walk into the doctor's office and they ask me, "Good morning, how are you this morning?" You walk in, what's your number? What time's your appointment? And then after that, what's the next thing? If you have a copay, they won't even click the button till you give them the copay. And then after you give them the copayment, they want to make sure that your insurance has cleared. And they're like, "Okay, go sit down," and they'll call you when they're ready. And I always wonder, I don't know if you all wonder, but I always ask myself, why do they schedule me an appointment at 9 a.m. if they're not going to see me till 11 a.m.? I never understood that, but that's a different story. But for them, we're just a number. And just think about it. Let me ask you this question. When a parishioner calls you, what is the first thing that we ask? Do we ever ask them, what's your parish ID number? What is your parish ID number? I say to my staff at the parish, I don't even know my parish ID number. Does that not make us seem a little bit like those doctor's offices? What's your parish ID number? And sometimes I say to my staff, you do recognize that when we baptize them, we don't give them an ID number, but we make them children of God. And I think the challenge for us is to be able to see in every single person that comes into my office, into my parish, into my school as a child of God. To be able to see in them the face and the image of God. And so again, I go back to this beautiful notion of the Beatitudes and Matthew 25. That as we do our ministry, we embrace that. And not only embrace, but perhaps more importantly, live it out in our lives each and every day. Because see, again, what we do is not a ministry, it's not a job, but rather it's a ministry. And what's the difference? That a job we just go and do because we're getting paid. But ministry we do because we are called, because God chooses us to go do what we're doing. And sometimes when we go do our job, we just go do it. At the end of the day, if I get off at 5 o'clock, I'm done. But our ministry is something that we embody. Just think about it. How oftentimes do you go, especially out here in the valley, that you go to a store and people know that you work at the parish because they already know you. It is there even then that you are to be the face and the image of God. It does not end at 5 o'clock. It does not end when you leave the parish office, when you leave the school office. It doesn't leave you ever. We are always that face, that image, that likeness of God. And each of us is called to always be able to embody it. And that's why, my dear friends, we also have to look at ourselves. And perhaps, maybe do an evaluation of ourselves. And I want to recommend that you do that in a regular basis. In the morning, when I wake up and I get up and I have to get ready to go to the parish, is it something that I'm like excited about? Is it something that I'm joyful about? Or am I saying to myself, oh God, not another day. And we're dreading to walk into the parish office. And we're dreading to walk into the school. And we're walking and we get to the parking lot and we stay in our car for another 20 minutes, just so that before we actually walk in. And yes, I know that many times in our parishes, it could be a challenge. It could be difficult. It can be hard. But that should never take away the joy of what we do. Because again, what we do is God's work in our lives. So an invitation I want to offer you is, look at yourself. Are you enjoying what you do? Does it bring joy to your life? Or is it a burden? Or is it an obstacle? Do we look forward every day to coming into the office? If we come in at 9 a.m. and we get off at 3 or 4 or 5, do we just spend time looking at our watch to make sure that time where I log into Paylocity and punch out arrives? Because the challenge can be very hard for us. Not again saying that it's going to be easy what we do. But what brings us joy is that we're building up the kingdom of God. So if the answer is, my ministry is not bringing me joy, my ministry is not bringing me gladness, but it's becoming an obstacle for me, I need to begin to look at myself. And I need to begin to ask myself the questions. Where does God want me to be? What does God want from me in this ministry that I do? What is God asking from me? And then we have to pray about our own life and what's going to bring us joy. Because you see, ministry should not just bring us joy and gladness, but we get the satisfaction of knowing that we're doing God's will in our lives. Because that's where God wants me to be. Meaning that we have to be obedient to God. A few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago or so, I was at the diocese for a couple of meetings. And before one of our meetings, I was in Cardinal McElroy's office, and because I had to talk to him about some stuff. And we were chit-chatting. And I asked him, I said, I thought to myself, again, don't tell him, Bishop, please. But I thought to myself, I said, I'm going to be brave today. He's not the Bishop of San Diego now. He's the apostolic administrator. So he's got I'll be brave. I said, do you know how cold it gets in Washington, D.C.? And he looks at me and he goes, yeah, I know. And then I said, I'll be a little bit brave. And I said, did you know how horrible it gets in the summer? Because it gets really bad. See, they don't only deal with the heat. It's super humid. They have mosquito galore. I remember, I was going to school there in the summers a couple of years ago. And I remember even in the summer, it was like 100 degrees. And I still had to wear long sleeves to class because of the mosquitoes. It's hot, it's muggy, it's humid. And he looks at me and he goes, yes, I know. And then I added something else. I said, have you seen the crime rate in Washington, D.C.? And then he looks at me and says, yes, I know. And so then I asked him, I was brave, and I'm like, so why would you ever want to leave San Diego? Beautiful weather. It's nice. Not as much crime as D.C. And he just looks at me and he goes, obedience. Obedience. And then I just shut up and walked out of the office, but that's a different story. But that stuck with me because we have to be obedient to God. We have to be obedient to what God is asking of us. And the invitation that we want to make you today and offer you is to begin to see this ministry that you do as an invitation from God, to begin to see it as an opportunity to bring God's people closer to Him and to help you be able to respond to that call. But again, we have to begin with ourselves. How am I doing? How do I feel about my ministry? How do I feel about my work? How is it that I'm doing in my own life? And how is it that I'm responding? Because it has to begin with us. And the reason it has to begin with us is because we, my dear friends, are the face not just of the church, but we are the face of God to those whom we encounter, those who walk into our offices. We are the face of God to them. Because the reality is, most of us priests and our deacons, our offices are not up in front. They keep us locked back there somewhere. And nobody can get to us without going through you. When somebody walks into our office distraught, when someone walks into our office sad, hungry, you're the first face that they see. And the question again is, are they able to see in you that face of God, that image of God? And my best favorite probably line in the Old Testament is found at the end of the story of creation in the book of Genesis. God saw what He did, what He had made, and He saw that it was good. And the author of the book of Genesis says to us, in His own image and likeness, He created us. Think about it. In His own image and likeness, He created us. That means that all of us are created in the face and image of God. And as ministers of the church, we are not only called to embody that image and that likeness of God, but we are called, my dear friends, to be able to transmit that to everybody that walks into our office. Even those that we know are going to complain. And we all have them. We all have them. We know that when we get an email from X person, it's not going to be an invitation for lunch or tell you what great job you're doing. But it's going to be them complaining about something that you did or didn't do. In my parish, I oftentimes get emails from people complaining about stuff that I have no idea what they're talking about. But it's even to those people that we need to be the face, the image, the likeness of God. Because see, that's what we do. We come and we are that image. And so again, we look at this beautiful notion, this beautiful question of, am I the face and the image of God? When I look at myself in the mirror every morning, I have to ask myself, am I the face of God? And I know that for all of us, sometimes in the morning, especially when we just wake up, we're like, this ain't the face of God. But we are always that face and that image, that likeness of God. And if we feel like we're not, what is it that I'm doing wrong? What do I need to change in my life? I want to give you a couple of suggestions, recommendations in your own ministry that you can do to help you always remember that you're the face and image of God. How do you begin your day at the parish? Before you get to the parish, do you spend any time at all praying? I'm going to offer you a very concrete example, especially for all of you who are in the front office. That before you walk in, you pray not only for patience, because I know you're going to need it, but say a prayer for each and every person that you're going to minister to that day. To each and every person that's going to walk into your office. Whether it's a parishioner, whether it's a student, whether it's a parent, whether it's a teacher, whether it's somebody else. Whatever it might be. Because even though we don't know who's going to walk into our office today, God does. And we need to pray for those folks. For everybody that's going to walk in, that's going to need our help. For each person to whom I will be the face and the image of God, we have to pray. So that's my first recommendation, is pray. Pray for yourselves, but pray for those as well that you will minister to. And then another recommendation is, if you have time, spend a little bit of time reading scripture. You don't have to read the whole Bible. You don't have to read a whole book. You don't even have to read a whole chapter. And a wonderful recommendation there are the Psalms. Maybe just a little one verse of one of the Psalms. And let God speak to you through His Word. Another recommendation that I would offer you is, every day, pray for patience. Oftentimes when I'm hearing confessions, people will say to me, oh, Father, I need patience with my kids. And then I'm like, well, ask God to give you more. And they say to me, ay, Padre, más. And I say to them, or tell you what I say to them. Ask for patience, because God can never be outdone in generosity. Because when the patience runs low, God will give us more. Because He always gives us beyond our want, beyond our need. Pope Francis says so beautifully that it is us who get tired of asking God. God does not get tired of giving us, but we get tired of asking. Especially if we're having and going through a difficult moment in our life, we need to ask God to give us more patience, so that we can be able to minister to those who we will encounter on that day. And so, right now, I'm going to ask you to we're going to take a couple of minutes, and I'm going to ask you to take a little bit of time to do a really quick evaluation of yourself and your ministry. Take a couple of minutes, just sit where you're sitting, just close your eyes, and again, reflect on these questions. Am I joyful in my ministry and what I do? Do I look forward to my ministry every day? Or am I already tired and exhausted before I get there? Am I full of God's love and peace in my ministry? Or am I struggling with it? And so I want to give you a couple of minutes there where you're seated, just to reflect on these questions. Just to meditate. And do a really quick self-evaluation. Look inside and see where you are. So I'll give you a couple of minutes and then we'll come right back. Does anybody want to share kind of any insights of your conversation? Not everybody at once. Not everybody at once. Just one at a time. Anybody want to share?
Well, as you guys know, we're from St. Francis. From what I heard, one of the busiest parishes. So we always get phone calls, people coming in.
You're not that busy. You're fine. I was there. It was fine.
Right? So, well, our recap was more like what we needed is basically patience. Because we get upset people that they're demanding, they want things at that moment, And for us, it's basically having that patience, that God gives us that patience for all of those over 10,000 parishioners that we have in our community.
10,000?
We have a lot of people.
Yes. Register or?
No, not registered. No, we have 2 masses which we have in our outdoor sanctuary every Sunday, because we have about 1,200 people at each mass. Plus we have 8 masses on Saturdays and Sundays, so it's a busy parish. And for having all those parishioners in a small team, I call it my mighty team, then it's kind of like just patience, breathe, listen their needs, and then we'll assist moving forward. It's a good thing that we do have a lot of deacons there as well that are there for spiritual guidance. So we always try to say, if you're having a tough moment, would you like to schedule a meeting with our deacons? And it seems to work, a lot. But I mean, like, just being in prayer to give us that patience that we need, and only having 2 priests at our parish for all of those people is, kind of difficult sometimes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sister Berta.
Father, also how important it is outside our job, because they know us. We go to Walmart, especially here in the valley. We go to Walmart, hi sister.
Maybe it's your veil, sister, that gives you away.
So they recognize you, and that's so important that you respond to them too at that place. So.
Yes, it's very important for us to recognize, as I said, that, we're not only ministers from 8 to 5 or whatever our work hours are, or only when we're on campus, but, we're ministers all over the place. Wherever it is that we go, we are to be the face and the image of God. We don't just clock out and then we stop being compassionate, merciful, and loving to those whom we serve. So,
can I mention something? I was in Washington, where I was previously before I came here, and I was there over the weekend, and I was there for my grandma's funeral, and then there was a lady that I know when I was there, right? And she came out to me and said, "Well, Bishop Leo, can you go and give a blessing, or my mom is sick, can you give a blessing to her?" And of course I was in the middle of the mass, I was saying the mass and everything, and like Father Efraín said, we are ministers wherever we are. And of course I was very patient with her and said, right now I can't, because I'm doing these things right now, but maybe later I might be able to go. But I didn't say anything to her that I was gonna go. But yes, I know people are very sensitive, and if you just say, "Hey, what are you bothering me? I'm not even here in Washington anymore," she will just probably go banana crackers, right? So wherever you are, and you're in the store, wherever you are, just why don't you call the office? Right now, I'm buying groceries for my family. You can call the office. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
But it's so true, and I think, Sister Berta said that, here in the valley, but I think it goes beyond the valley. I know that I sometimes go out for dinner with parishioners, and they always say that they can't take me anywhere because we always bump into people, and I spend a lot of time talking to people. And then, I went with this particular family that always gave me a hard time. So we went out, it was somebody's birthday, and they wanted to have dinner up in La Jolla. So we went up there, and we got to the restaurant. And I wasn't even wearing my clerics that day. And we got to the restaurant, and before I was in the process of literally sitting down, and the lady across at the table next to us says, "Father, is that you?" And the family I was with, all of them at the same time just started like shaking their heads like, "We can't take you anywhere." But what was interesting, I remember that experience because the lady at the other table says, "Father, maybe this is God's way of telling me I need to go back to church because I haven't gone to Mass in over a month." So I said, "I'll see you on Sunday." But, so it's those small opportunities that we have to minister to them. It's not just about what happens in the office. It's not just about, us answering the questions, but it's the impact that we're going to have on people's lives. Even though you may never know the impact, even though you may never see those people again, they will remember. I bump into people that I haven't seen in 20 years, and they say to me, "Oh, I remember something that happened, and you did my relative's funeral, and you gave this beautiful homily, and you said this particular thing, and I'm just like looking at him like, okay, thank you. Because see, again, we have to remember that we're not doing our job. We're doing God's work. We're doing ministry. Our ministry is doing God's work. And so even though we might never see that person again, that person is going to remember our face. And the question that we should ask ourselves is, what do the people want us to be remembered by? You know, what do we want them to take when they walk out of our office? Is it going to be God's love and mercy? Or do we want them to experience that we were the worst, meanest people ever? Because see, we want to bring people closer to God. And one of the things that we do is we do so because of what people hear about us. And see, we have to remember that it's very rare that somebody goes, that somebody says, oh, I want to go to St. Mary's in El Centro, and I want to go there and go to Mass there. They're going to say, okay. But they're not going to say, oh yeah, I went there because I had a beautiful experience with Sandy. Sandy was the best person ever that took care of me there at St. Mary's. They're not going to say that. But they will say to them, oh, don't go to St. Mary's because that Eric guy that works in the office, he was the worst person to me. He was the rudest person. So they're never going to say the good things about the work that we do. But they're going to say all the reasons why they shouldn't come to St. Mary's. And I think that's why we always have to be ministers of the gospel in and outside of our offices of campus. It's going to be very important. So, the last hour we spoke about us not having a job but doing a ministry. And so, in every organization, in every company, one of the things that they do is they have all these retreats, and they always say, we need to come up with a mission statement. And I think that the church is no exception. The church has a mission statement, and we have a mission to accomplish. But the cool thing that I like is that us as a church, we don't have to have a retreat. We don't have to do anything to develop our mission statement because Jesus gives us the mission. What is our mission as Catholics? It's very simple. Our mission is, Jesus gives it to us post-Easter resurrection. Go and make disciples. Very simple. One line. That's what Jesus tells us to do. Go and make disciples. So it's really cool because we don't need to spend hours and hours and days and weeks trying to develop a mission statement. Our mission is to go and make disciples. And the way we go and make disciples is we go and we share the good news. We become heralds of the good news. And I love, again, going to this notion of calling. I love what Jesus does. He goes and he chooses the 12. And you know what I like about Jesus' calling of the 12? Is that he calls them by name. He calls them by name. God, in the same way, calls each of us by name. Not only in our jobs, but just think about it. How many of you here do sacramental prep? Faith formation. How many of you do faith formation, right? And what happens in faith formation? What happens when we receive the sacraments? In baptism, I'm a canon lawyer, so I could tell you there's a couple of things that are requirement for a sacrament to be valid. Gloria, you should remember these because you took my class. You need formula, intent, and matter. Formula, intent, and matter. In baptism, the formula is Maria Luisa, I baptize you. So we say the name. Sister, you failed my class. So in baptism, just think about the sacraments. Think about the sacraments. In baptism, the formula is, Maria Luisa, I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Think about confirmation. Gloria, be sealed with the gift of the Holy Spirit. Think about marriage. The formula is the wedding vows that the church gives us. And what is the formula? I, so-and-so, take you, so-and-so, to be my spouse. I promise to love you and honor you. In the consecrated life, Sister Maria Luisa, you remember, Sister Berta, help your sister over here out a little bit. Remember, in the consecrated life, you say your name. In the ordained life, we are called to orders, and our names are called. Because God chooses us by name. And so I want to say that because it's not by mistake, it's not by accident, it's not by error that we are here doing ministry. Not in this room, but in your parishes doing ministry. But it is because God has chosen you by name to go and to do what you do. That's the beauty of God. That's how God works. God chooses us and calls us to go and make disciples. And He sends the disciples forth. Remember what happens after Jesus' ascension into heaven? 50 days after, we have Pentecost Sunday. And they receive the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. And then they go out. And they go share the good news. And they go and make disciples. Each of us, in the same way, are called to go and make disciples. And we do so by sharing the mission, accomplishing the mission of the church. And each and every one of you, without exception, in your jobs that are not jobs, but that are ministries, are called to make disciples. And everybody that walks into the office is in search, remember, is hungry. And they're coming looking for something. Some of them are really nice about it. Some of them want you to break the rules. Some of them want you to do them a favor. Some of them are coming for baptisms. Some for First Holy Communion. But my least favorite is those that want to get married. I had an appointment last Wednesday, a week ago today, with this couple. Oh, sorry. I don't even know what day I'm living in now, Sister Berta. I had an appointment last Wednesday with a couple, and I knew it was going to be one of those appointments. I call them those appointments. Because let me tell you what happened. They want to have a destination wedding. They want to get married in Italy. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. We could do that. They want to get married up in Lake Como, which is a very touristy, very kind of pompous, rich people place where people get married. And they said, well, we found this beautiful little church. And, then I explained to them, well, in Italy, like in some places in Mexico, there's all these small little churches, but they're connected to a bigger parish. So I said, you're going to have to connect to the bigger parish because they're probably the ones that are going to handle everything. And then I said, and then they're like, okay. And then I said, the other thing that you're probably going to have to do is you're going to have to find a priest that speaks English so that he could go do your wedding. For the record, I did not say that because I wanted to go to the wedding, because I don't like to go do those destination weddings. And then the bride-to-be, it's always the bride. No, I'm just kidding. But the bride-to-be says to me, oh, you don't have to worry about that. I was like, oh, so you have your priest. She goes, no. She goes, no, I have a friend of mine who's a pastor at a Lutheran church up in Northern California that could do the wedding for us. And I was like, no, I don't think that's going to work. And you need to have a priest. And she goes, looks at me with a straight face. And she says, she did this on my table. And she says, but it's my wedding. And I was so tempted to say, get out. Get out. Leave me alone. Don't waste my time. And so I just said, I agree. It's your wedding. But it's the priest's house. So we got to play by his rules. And I share that with you because so oftentimes we get these people that like just make our blood pressure like go boom, skyrocket. And you're like, at what point?
Father, that doesn't happen in Calexico.
Oh, never, especially in Calexico. Well, good thing that you brought that up because yesterday I got another call. And actually, I'm not even going to tell you the story. I'm going to read you the story because people think that I make this stuff up. Let me see, where's his email? I got this email from this guy yesterday. Good morning, Father. I need your assistance urgently due to time constraints. My name is so-and-so, and I am registered at Corpus Christi Church along with my family. Me and my fiance are set to be married through the Catholic Church on March 15th, 2025 in Mérida, Yucatan, Mexico, and have not yet sent through all our paperwork through the parish to get approved by the bishop. What happened was, since my fiance lives in Mexicali, which is a border town. He doesn't know. He's definitely not the parish because I always talk about the valley. But anyway, which is a border town. We decided to go do all of our marriage preparation in Mexicali because we thought it would be best since we are getting married in Mexico. Also, our wedding planner. I hate wedding planners. I hate is a bad word, but I don't like wedding planners. But our wedding planner misled us by telling us that we would be able to send all of the paperwork ourselves. We have all the paperwork needed by the parish in Mérida, which is, and then he gives me the list. Can you please meet with us like today so that we can turn everything to you so that you could send it to Mérida as soon as possible? We really appreciate it. Thank you. So I just responded. I said, Dear so-and-so, we have a very mean chancellor, Maria Olivia Galvan. Just kidding, Maria Olivia. But we get these people in our parishes that want all this stuff. And we're like, how can I do this? You're like a couple of weeks away from the time that you're supposed to get married. How can I accomplish everything that you want to get this marriage file to Mérida when postal service in Mexico is horrible? How do you want me to do this? And how many times in our parishes do we experience that? So what did I do? I did not email him back. I called him. And I said, this is very hard and this is very difficult and I understand you're going through a very stressful time. But why don't we sit down and talk about it in person? And then I will see what I can do to help you. Why? Because this couple wants to receive a sacrament. Again, raise your hand if you are in faith formation. Right? Who of you, with the exception of Marioli and Sister Berta, how many of you could tell me, what does the Catechism of the Catholic Church say a sacrament is? The Catechism of the... I'll help you, don't worry. The Catechism of the Catholic Church says what? A sacrament is a sign instituted by Christ that gives grace. Right? Am I right, sister? Yes. That's what the Catechism says. So, another word for grace is gift. And so, in my mind, even though this guy made my blood pressure go up, what I say to people, to parishioners at Corpus Christi, I say to them often when they ask me questions, I say, do you know that when I arrived here at Corpus Christi, I had a lot of hair? And even though he made me frustrated, I asked myself, who am I to take the grace, the gift that God might want to give this couple who are searching out to be married in the church? Is it an ideal situation? No. Is it the perfect setting? No. But how am I, or who am I, to perhaps impede God's grace coming upon them? Who am I to probably be the one to say, no, you can't receive a gift from God. It's not my gift. It's God's gift. It's God who's giving the grace, not me. And so, in these situations, my prayer is that hopefully in some way, shape, or form, they can be able to experience a little bit of God's love, God's compassion, God's mercy, even if in a small little way. Part of the mission is that we have to go and we have to plant seeds. And the worst part about planting seeds is that many times we don't get to see the fruits that it bears. That doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form that we stop planting the seed. It means that we continue to do so. And we allow God's grace, especially in the sacramental life of the church, to take its course. So yes, there's going to be those parishioners that are going to get on our nerves, that are going to frustrate us, that are going to push us to the limit. But they're coming to us because they're searching and they're looking. Doesn't only happen in marriage though. Did a funeral once where there was a first wife, a second wife. They didn't get along. They didn't talk. There was kids from the first marriage, and so it was kind of a big mess during the funeral of the man that had died. And I really prayed for him at that mass, because after all that mess, I was like, are you really going to make it to heaven? You need all the prayers I can give you. Because what happened? If you've ever been to Corpus Christi, you're always welcome. But Corpus Christi is very similar to St. Mary's, where it's kind of a almost round kind of church. And so I start doing the funeral. Well, on this side was the family of the first wife. On this side, behind the choir, was the family of the new wife. And in the center, it was empty. Completely empty. So before Mass, I had agreed that I normally don't allow eulogies, but sometimes I allow one. So I made an exception and I allowed two, because again, they were very distraught, very angry. So I said, we'll do two. One from this side, one from this side. So they did their eulogy. First, the first family, the son, who from the first wife did the eulogy, and then somebody from this side, I can't even remember who it was, came and did the eulogy on this side. And then it went on, and then readings are going on. Because I wanted the eulogies at the beginning. Then we're doing the readings. And then my bereavement, I see the son of the second wife get up and go to the back, talk to my bereavement minister for like a good while. And then he comes back and he sits down, and my bereavement minister comes up to me during the second reading, and you know what she whispers in my ear? Because I had the second wife go first, and then the second wife go second. So the current wife comes up, the current wife comes up with this idea. You know what she wanted? A rebuttal. She wanted a rebuttal. So I say to my bereavement minister, I said, we're not doing that. This is not a debate. This is mass. We're not doing this. So she went away, and she told the son, I was like, nope. And then so he sits next to his mom, and they're chit-chatting. So continue with mass. Right after communion, I came back, I sat in the presider's chair, and they were still finishing up the hymn. And so my bereavement minister comes up and says, the current wife says she'll give us $1,000 more if she can have her rebuttal. And I just said, it's not about the money. And why am I sharing these stories? And I could be here all day sharing stories. But why am I sharing this story with you? Is because we get these people in our parish that probably have never been to church, probably just want to come and get the sacraments, probably just want to do this and that. And the temptation for us is to say, go to Cristo Rey across town, right? San Diego, just go to the other place. Don't come here. Don't come to my place. Go find somewhere else. Go to Mexicali, Catedral, they'll do anything for you. And so then, that's what our temptation is. Yet, we are called, as I've been saying all morning, to be the face and image of God. And look at the ministry of Jesus. Look at the life of Jesus. What did Jesus do? What did Jesus do? When he was confronted with a difficult situation, he didn't say, well, I won't cure you because of X, Y, and Z. Let's think about it. The lepers that were cured from leprosy, only of one came back. If I would have been Jesus, I would have said, well, I ain't curing you until they all come back. Until they're all getting leprosy back again because nobody came back and thanked me. Remember? He could have said, you all sick again? You don't even are grateful people. You don't even say thank you. Because see, what was important for Jesus, what needs to be important to us, is the compassion, the mercy, and the love of God. Even when they get on our nerves. Even when they frustrate us. And yes, I want you to take something from today, is this. That when you go back, they're still going to annoy you. And they're still going to drive you nuts. But what is it that how do I respond to these situations? How do I deal with these different things? How do I respond? I love St. John's letter to the Romans. It's his most complex of his epistles. St. Paul's letter. Because in Romans chapter 13, verse 14, St. Paul says something really cool. He says, put on Christ. We have to put on Christ. Meaning that we must become another Christ. We must be Christ-like. We have to be like Him. And therein lies the challenge. Because I'm sure if I ask everyone in this room, if in the last week, did you have somebody that got on your nerves or that frustrated you? Everybody's going to raise their hand. Because we're going to continue to have those people. But I want you to think about it this way. More than likely, those are the people that most need to see God in us. In the Diocese of San Diego, they think I don't have enough work to do, so they always give me something else. So one of the many things that I do is I'm the main Catholic chaplain for the San Diego Sheriff's Office. And so I have a badge and a uniform and everything. It's really cool. And so sometimes I, get called, especially if it's a Catholic deputies or something. And about a year ago, the son of one of our deputies was killed. And so I met with the family, met with the deputy, met with the family, and so I did the funeral. And during our meeting before the funeral with the family, the deputy shared with me that it had probably been about 20, 25 years since she and her family had stepped into a church. And the reason why she was sharing this is she says, Father, just so that you know, you're probably going to be saying the prayers and answering your own prayers because we don't know what to do. So don't worry, I'll guide you through everything. I'll tell you when to stand, when to sit, when to kneel, and when to do all that stuff. And then I had a conversation with them, and we did the funeral. A month later, I talked to them. And since that funeral day, they're at Mass each and every Sunday. But imagine if I would have been that priest that said, well, if you're not going to church, why do a funeral? How do we respond? Again, the mission is to go and share the good news. How do we share it? Or do we share it? But it's also important, as I've been sharing, that we look at ourselves. We look at ourselves and see how we react, how we confront these difficult situations. How do we deal with them? How do we process them? Sometimes I have my staff members come up to me and they say, Father, I had a parishioner that yelled at me really bad today about something that I didn't even do. And I hear them and I listen to them. And then when they're done, I'm like, sorry, you had a very bad experience this morning. But I say to them, look at Jesus on the cross. They killed him. What can we expect? How much more so is that for each of us? We are called to bring the good news, to share the grace of God, to be a compassionate, a loving, and merciful people, even to those whom we struggle to be so with because they don't want to be there. They don't want to do what the church asks of them. But we must remember that we are always to be compassionate, merciful, and loving. Especially in those difficult moments, especially in those difficult times that we encounter people who think we're just a checkoff list. And I'm going to do this because I want to get to heaven. And if I receive this sacrament, they don't realize that we have to live the sacraments. But what is it that we're doing? We're planting these seeds. We're pouring these seeds into their hearts and into their lives. Not our doing, but God's doing. Not our work, but God's work. And the challenge that we have to confront here today and now is, what is the impact that we're going to have on those people that walk into our parish community? Are we going to share the mission? Or are we going to be an obstacle to God's grace and God's love? Cardinal McElroy, as Bishop Pulido shared with us at his opening remarks, made this notion or this observation that the reason why people leave the church is that important question. If I don't come to Mass today, will people know that I'm not here? Will somebody miss me? Will somebody know that I am gone? That's what our challenge is. That each and every single person that we receive, that we welcome into our parish community, feels that they belong. Because see, like us, it is God who chooses them. And we are simply the instruments of God to their encounter with Him. Are we obstacles, or are we instruments of God's grace, of God's gift? And therein lies the challenge. The whole purpose of today is that we recognize that we have to be a welcoming community. I say this oftentimes at my masses and my parish and to my staff. I ask them, how many of you are happy to be here? And many of them raise their hands. But then, none of them are smiling. Why do people go to other faith traditions? Because when you show up, they say, welcome, Eric. Thank you for being here. We're very happy that you're here. We'll have you come in and sit here. Take my seat. Can you imagine if we took somebody's place in their pew in our parishes? What that happens? Just think about it. In the Protestant churches, they give them the whole pew. Right before Christmas, I said to all of my parishioners, I said, if you come to Christmas Mass and somebody is seated on your pew at your spot, don't complain or kick them out. Say thank you for being here. When somebody walks into our office, is it really the first question that we ask them, are you registered in our parish? Or do we say, if somebody comes into my office and says, I want to get married in the church, is the first question, or the first thing out of our mouth is, are you registered in the parish? Or do we say, congratulations, thank you for being here, we want to walk with you? How do we respond to these situations? Believe it or not, more often than not, our response is, are you registered in the parish? Before we give you a sacrament, before we give you a gift, we want to make sure that you belong to us, that you're registered in our parish. Yet, when you stop and think about it, as I said, sacrament is grace, grace is gift. To receive a gift, what do we have to do? Absolutely nothing. Gifts are freely given. I don't have to do anything except it be Christmas, my birthday, my ordination anniversary to get gifts. I don't have to do nothing. I just got to wake up. Yet we want them to meet all these requirements. When a couple comes to meet with me about marriage prep, for example, and we sit down and we chat, and they always have a lot of questions. And they always give me all their complicated stories, because they're always complicated. And they're like, what do we need to do, Father, to get married? And I say, just want to get married. That's all you want to do. Because for God, there's nothing impossible. Padre, ¿qué tenemos que hacer para casarnos en iglesia? And I answer in Spanish, tener ganas. God takes care of everything else. And we can work and do everything else. Because for God, nothing is impossible, Jesus says. But are we making it impossible for them? Or are we making them feel welcome? The challenge for us is to make everyone not only feel welcome and part of our parish, but also we want them to feel that they are loved by God. And God does not require a parish ID number. Even the church does not require a parish ID number. You can ask a canon lawyer. I'm a canon lawyer, so you can ask me. Mm-hmm. Canon law does not stipulate that we have to be registered in a parish and we have to be in somebody's database. The only thing that matters is that I'm here because I want to receive the grace from God. So I want to give you a couple of questions to reflect upon. And the first one is, what can I do in my life to become a better face and image of God, welcome everyone into my parish community, into my school community? That's the first one. The second question is, how do I respond in the difficult situations like the examples that I gave you? And your answer should not be, I just give them to Father. Still give them to us. So I want to give you a couple of minutes just to reflect on that important question. And then, yes, like when you have these difficult parishioners, difficult people that walk into your office. How do you respond, and how can we make it better? So I'll give you a couple of minutes to reflect on those questions. Anybody? Wow.
Not everybody
Yes.
I was thinking it helps to be in the state of grace so that sin doesn't pull you into the snap moments of anger and impatience.
Yeah.
That's it.
Any other thoughts?
That it's, when you're in an office, it's always, you're going to encounter a lot of different demeanors in people. And when they are coming to demand something or to complain about something, and because I see them through the camera, I'm like, oh, here comes so-and-so, warning everybody, please don't wait.
We're closed for lunch.
Everybody out to lunch. It's like, to remember that they are, what they are expressing when they come in, it's a need that they have.
Yes.
And it's not about me.
Yes.
And to try to remember to separate myself and my emotions and my needs from theirs. And I'm not there to try to correct them if they are wrong, but to be compassionate and to understand that if they are yelling in front of the office or they are yelling, it's because they have a need, something that hasn't been met. And perhaps just listening to them, which is really hard sometimes, it's going to help. And instead of coming back at them, to have that compassion and to understand that that there's something that they're missing, that they need something right there. And perhaps I have that opportunity to help them calm down and know that when they come in, we will understand, and we will try to do our best to help them. And it is hard, and we were saying sometimes the hardest part is to separate our own emotions and our own needs from any situation, because we tend to react to what people are doing rather than act upon it. And to take action, it requires to think, so we have to stop and we have to not react. And it is hard, and it doesn't always work, but it is what I think I can do to try to be better, to be that face of God, is to remember that it's not about me, and in that moment it's about that person, and what does she need? Whether she's wrong or right, I have to be that person that helps them find that compassion and that understanding.
And I think, one of the things, and Father John Hurley, who has worked with Bishop Pulido and Marioli on this synodal process that we're undergoing, and even helped us with today, is he has this beautiful phrase that I love that he uses often, and it's called the sacrament of presence. And I think sometimes when we have these parishioners that come very irate, very upset, because of something that happened or didn't happen, they don't necessarily want us to fix it. They just want us to listen and hear it. And I think that our human nature, though, is, if you stop and think about it, is that we always want to, when we hear something, we want to try to fix it. We want to try to solve it. And I think sometimes the hardest thing that we have to work on is just listening and being present to them. So, Gloria, you were going to say something?
Pretty much a lot of what my sister just shared here. One of the things that I try to remember in my prayers today, everything that I think, say, and do, all for the glory of God, to give God glory. That doesn't mean Gloria matters right now. It's like I need to step down and give God glory. And I was telling Julie right now, it's so hard sometimes in these difficult situations, but to just take the moment to make the person feel important. For that moment, that's what they need. I don't know if I can fix it. I don't know if I have the right answer, but I know the right thing to do is to be present, like you said, to just listen. And then pray that everything that I think, say, and do may be for His glory. That I won't do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, think the wrong thing. Just let it go and let God be for the moment. And then the Holy Spirit will guide me. I don't know it all, but the Holy Spirit will guide me. And trust.
Any other thoughts? I always get in trouble at my parish because I always say, today's gospel is my favorite gospel. But one of my favorite gospels is, and I think that we can all relate to, is the walk to Emmaus. Because when you stop and think about it, and you see what's going on, you have Jesus who starts to walk with these two disciples. And before he does anything, before he corrects them, before he starts teaching them, he simply listens to them. The evangelist says to us, they began to explain to Jesus everything that had occurred. And Jesus could have easily said, well, yeah, but what about this? Or Jesus could have said, yeah, but what about that? But instead of doing that, Jesus simply walked with them and listened to them. And many times, again, especially when we're dealing with irate people, with people that are angry, that are upset, people that are frustrated, people that are going through a difficult situation, we just simply need to listen to them. Because, I think Bishop Pulido would be the only one here that would have all the answers. The rest of us, kind of are just there. We don't know, we don't have all the answers to all the questions. We don't have the answers to what they're going and experiencing. And I don't think that any of us, I don't think none of your pastors, none of our bishops, the cardinal, don't expect us to have all the answers for everything that is happening. We just want them to kind of have this experience of being part of. That they're part of the church, that they're part of what we do as a parish community. And so I think that's what the important thing is.